I'm Mitchell Levy, global credibility expert. And we are, there are two times in my day that I absolutely love. I mean, anytime I get to meet this with somebody absolutely brilliant is an amazing part. And that's what I love about this show, Leaders Living Their Values. And the other is when we sit down with anyone and I help them craft their 10-word or less statement, their CPOP, where they're executing on their purpose. And I got to do that both with Aneace Haddad, and so this is the follow up, the post CPOP, now the interview. And Aneace, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, Mitchell. Wonderful being here. It's wonderful chatting with you. We can just go on and on.
It is very nice. So just so the audience gets to know who you are, who is Aneace Haddad?
So long, God, how do I do that in the short version? So geographically, I'm in Singapore, so it's 8 a.m. now. Originally from the US, but I left 30-something years ago. I was in France for 20 years. I've been in Singapore 17 years. Originally a programmer, techie. I created a payment software company in the south of France, grew it to 30 countries. Sold it in 2007 when I was 47, and proceeded to have a midlife crisis meltdown, and which to a completely new career as an executive coach and C-suite team coach. So that's kind of a very short nutshell who I am.
Well, that's only a part of you. That's kind of like who you are on the work side. Tell me a little bit more robust who you are.
So more robust, very, let's see, I'm very national. I grew up, my father's from Iraq, my mother's American. I was born in Texas, but by the time I was 21, I'd lived half my life overseas, already French fluently. And so I've spent a life kind of in between cultures, in between languages. I still only have one passport. It's a U.S. passport, so I still have all the global IRS stuff to deal with that Americans have to deal with. So that, on an identity side, is a big part of me. It's this very international, mixed environment. I have two grown daughters in the U.S., in Raleigh, both of them in Raleigh, North Carolina. I've got 6 grandchildren that are there. My son is half French. He's a little bit younger than them. He's 32. He's moved from France. He lived with me a few years in Singapore, and now he's been in Brisbane the last 5-6 years in Australia. And my wife is Australian, and I now have 2 stepchildren, teenage stepchildren. So it feels like I've been around teenagers for a decade. I still don't understand them. Each one of them brings something different to figure out. And then as we were speaking now, this morning is my stepson's 17th birthday. And the family that I married into has a tradition of breakfast in bed for the birthday person, even if it's a work day. So this morning was quite a flurry of activity while he was getting ready to, I was getting ready for this call. He was getting ready to go off to school. My wife's getting ready to go to work. So yeah, it's a good energetic start to the day.
A great B-Day tradition, breakfast in bed. So you took on that executive coaching thing, midlife crisis-ish. And what's interesting, talk a little bit about your area of focus, not from a selling perspective, but tell me where you spend your time and energy.
So interestingly, around a year and a half ago, I made a conscious decision to no longer coach individuals or teams under 40. And the reason I did that was I was beginning to notice a very sharp qualitative difference amongst the individuals and teams that I coached that were under 40 versus those over 40. There's a difference in approach. Under 40, there's a desire for certainty. Just tell me what to do. Give me the 5 bullet points to follow. There's a search for those kinds of answers. And over 40, there's a growing comfort with ambiguity and not having these answers. And so by making that choice, plus I'm 64, so at some point it becomes a bit unsustainable to be coaching people in their 30s because the difference it gets pretty big. So that was another angle that drove that. But it was a fascinating, by doing that helped me gain a lot more distinctions and clarity on what is different. So at this point, my focus is entirely on C-suite teams, top teams of large organizations that are pretty much always made up of people over 40. I've shied away from startups, even though years ago that would have been kind of my natural space. But there's something in the complexity of large organizations that I've come to really appreciate. Steering a huge ship is much harder than steering a sailboat. Although I don't know how to do either of them. So that's my focus, is large international, multinational companies working with the top teams. People mainly over 40, in their 40s, 50s, early 60s, leveraging the changes that happen at midlife, that creates a very fertile ground for the emergence of what I call leadership superpowers, bringing those out. And then my latest obsession is how, when you have a room full top team executives, very experienced, all in their 40s, 50s, early 60s, they're going through all these changes. How does their individual transformation at midlife create a multiplying effect amongst the team? My intuition is that there's got to be some way to unlock that to where team effectiveness can really, really soar with minimal effort.
So Aneace, why? Why do you care about this? Why is this important to you?
Wow, that's a really great question. I think it came from my shift from between 47 and 50, former CEO of my company, and then the struggles that I went through during that period, the challenges, you've run lots more companies than I have, the challenges, mixed with the human interaction and all that. The level of human connectivity that happens in those types of organizations at top levels like that is quite phenomenal. And we try to pretend like we keep emotion and everything out of the office and all that, personal separate and all that kind of thing. But there's so much going on that I find that to be an area where I can bring value to people's lives while at the same time bringing value to company. So it kind of touches a number of different aspects. It's not one or the other. It's not like life coaching versus executive coaching. It's executive coaching / life coaching / purpose finding. Who do we want to be as a better team, as better people?
I hear you. I'm trying to think about that. Here's what I often find. And so I'll tell you what I'm looking for to unravel. I often find that somebody's superpower today stems from a kryptonite that they were facing for a period of time, they overcame, and now they want to support that in others. So give me a scenario where in the past, this was your kryptonite.
So a few scenarios. So the big scenario that comes to mind immediately as you ask that question is dealing with rainmakers on your team, on your top team. So the people that bring in a great deal of business, and you love having that business come in, and when they are when they work well with their colleagues, it's all excellent. But then you often have situations with the rainmaker who doesn't work well with others and has ambitions that kind of go against their peers, their colleagues. And I really struggled with that. That was a big part of what I take away from me in terms of regret from those years, that I didn't know how to deal with it. And so I struggled with that for a long time. And as I became a certified coach and all the rest, and I developed the tools, now I coach many C-suite people who have somebody like that on their team, and they're going, I don't know how to deal with this person. They're cancerous. They bring in a lot of money, and my bosses all love them. And I'll ask them the question, the thing that never occurred to me at that time when I was in their shoes: what does this person want? What's their dream? What's their view of the future? What keeps them awake at night? And usually I get a blank stare back. The person says, I never even thought of that. And then they start looking at it from the other person's perspective. And because they're doing it in a smarter way than I did, and they're doing it probably a little earlier on, they often turn the situation around. That's one thing, I think. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it does. So are you saying, in retrospect, that person who was a rainmaker on the company where you were CEO, but he was bad on culture, you're kind of thinking to yourself, you should have fired him?
That would have been the easy. Well, I didn't do it.
Saying, fire him or work with him or her.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's more, I'm looking at it backward retrospectively, as I know he wanted to go on and be a CEO somewhere else. With what I know today, I could have managed a situation and had a heart-to-heart conversation. Say, dude, that's not going to happen if you keep beating up on your peers. You got to build them up. People that are running other businesses, other parts of the world, even though you don't get any of their commissions or anything, you got to build them up. You got to be a real team player. Otherwise, you've reached your limit. You're not going to go further. That's what, if I had known how to do that at the time, I could have turned the situation around. And that's what I see with people I coach now. When they do that kind of thing, they practice their empathy and everything, they're able to turn it around. Unless it's gone way too far and they've hurt, their bridges are burned and stuff like that. But in many cases, there's still time to turn things around.
I got it. So thank you. Helpful. Perfect. So when is the time, even if they are a phenomenal performer, when is the time to actually say it's time to fire?
Yeah. That has to always be an option that is never taken off the table. Otherwise you get stuck. Okay, I can fire this person. I was stuck in that. I didn't feel I could fire this person because the board loved them and we needed the cash. So it was like, deal with it or die. But if nothing else is working, and these conversations you can sense have become adversarial and detrimental, and you're not able to connect anymore, too many bridges have been burned, then it just needs to be cut off. But it's sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's very difficult. It's a very complex thing. It's like a divorce, I guess. Like, at what point do you actually call for the divorce? And
Just so you
everybody's
know,
got their
just
different
such a
points.
horrible analogy, but I hear you. But that's exactly what it is. But yuck.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It is.
Interesting. So if you're coaching the CEO and you could do it for yourself as well. And the board is saying, hey, we need the revenue. The board is saying, hey, keep this guy on board. And now in retrospect, with what potentially that person did in the past, and when you look at other clients, how do you coach a CEO that says, hey, listen, I know it's a hit, but the bigger hit that's happening with the vampire, the emotional vampire that's on board is bigger. How do you coach that? And how do you do it in a way that really resonates?
God, I wouldn't be able to have a general answer to how I would do it. It depends on the situation. I think if I'm coaching someone right now who's at that position with a person in their team, maybe even two. And it's like, yeah, I see your certainty and I see that you've tried and all that. I think, yeah, how are you going to go about it? How do you want to go about it? I'm not going to tell them you shouldn't do that and here's what you should do differently. It's more if someone comes up with a hesitation or a question like, look, this person is really cancerous and causing a lot of problems. I want to fire him, but at the same time, I'm not sure. There's some coaching that can go into that. If somebody said, no, that's what I've got to do now, I'm convinced of it, I'm not going to get in their way. There isn't anything to coach there.
Tell me about the focus on. This is one of the things I see a lot, less so these days, but I still see it, where the CEO has a disconnect potentially between their external integrity, what they say to everyone, and their internal integrity, what they do. Yeah. And to me, that is like one of the biggest violations. Actually, let me tell you two violations that CEOs could do. Not be coachable, particularly by their team or their customers. Of course, they'll pretend to be coachable by the board. Not be coachable, and then have this disconnect between internal and external. Tell me about, what do you see as if a board brought you on board and the CEO is having trouble, when is the point of no return, and also how do you allow the CEO to see, like what you said before with the sales guy that was on your team? That made so much sense. Give me another example, whether it's real or something you make up. What's important?
Yeah. So one of my favorite examples, or one of the examples that really impacted me as a coach, and this is, I tell this story in both of my recent books. It was in India. I was coaching the managing director of a textile factory in India, and they were having too many incidents at the factory, and they even had a couple of fatalities. And I was coaching him not on the topic of safety in terms of skills and stuff around safety, because I don't know anything about running a textile factory, especially in India, but more just coaching him. So in one of our first conversations, we were talking about commitment to safety. So I asked him, on a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you to 100% safety in your organization? And he said, commitment is very, very high. So I said, well, okay, well, what is it from 1 to 10, just to get a feel? He says, probably 9 out of 10. And then he said, my top team, my team, probably just under that, maybe 8, 8.5. They had spent a lot of money with consultants and organizations coming in and putting in dashboards and safety and all that. It felt to him like they had done a lot, but still there were safety issues. And then through that conversation, we could then focus on that. So the conversation then switched to, maybe that's why people are dying. If it's not 10 out of 10 commitment, maybe that's why. If his commitment was 8, maybe there would be even more people dying. Then he got angry. He says, you don't understand. I can't be 10 out of 10 committed because I've got, I don't know, a few thousand people. They do crazy things. Most of them are uneducated. I've got a long shop floor. If somebody wants to get from one end to the other and a forklift is going by, he'll jump on the forklift knowing that they're not supposed to do that. I can't be on everyone's back. And in that instant, what emerged was that his belief on 10 out of 10 commitment to safety meant the superhuman ability to be on physically everyone's back, telling them, don't do this, don't do that. And he was quite angry at that moment. It was like, I can't do that. I said, that's fine, okay. And then on the next session, a couple of weeks later, he was really excited. So he had spent time thinking about that. What is 10 out of 10 commitment? What is my 10 out of 10 commitment to safety? And on our next session, he said, he was real excited. He said, I found my 10 out of 10 commitment to safety. He said, I was walking in the factory. An elderly janitor slipped and twisted his ankle. I stopped to help him. He says, that's 9 out of 10. That's what I would have done. I'd stop and help the guy. He took his jacket off, put it under his head. He called the safety people. They came down. They checked him out, said, it's fine. He just needed to go home, stay off his leg for a little while. And he says, that's when I decided I would drive him home myself. So the managing director took the janitor, put him in his car, drove him home. He said that I never would have done that in the past. This is what he's doing as 10 out of 10. He helped him into his house. The guy's wife, they had tea. He made sure that the wife committed to keeping her husband in bed for a while so that he could recover. And what he discovered was that, and this is not like 10 safety means you got to do this all over the world, every single human being. What he discovered was that for himself, 10 out of 10 commitment to safety was to really see each individual as a human being and connect emotionally with them.
Yeah.
And then people talk. People say, hey, did you see the boss took the janitor home in his car, helped them out and all that? It shifts the culture because the CEO has shifted. So I think that's an example of where this internal and external are not quite matching. And as a coach, you help to find where the chink is in that. You help to find what's matching in that. And then you create paradoxical, ambiguous situations where someone can say, what in the world is 10 out of 10 commitment for me? And if they can sit in that, which is why I love midlife, because midlife, our brains are able to sit in that longer than they were when we were in our 20s and 30s. If you can sit in that for a while and not have an instant answer, you can find some real magic in there.
Well, so did you actually at the end of that session, before he had, actually, just to be clear, absolutely beautiful story, and what above and beyond what I believe as humans we should do, what I believe CEOs should do is that, or something along those lines. When you left at the time in which he got angry and upset, and you finished that session, how did you finish the session? Did you try to give an answer? Did you say, here's your homework?
No.
What did you finish with?
No, so I don't know, at the time I would probably laugh today and say, look, dude, I'm sorry. Right. You're doing everything you can. It's a really hard job. Let's park it for here now. And if I felt that he was still a little bit open to hearing something, I'd say, but it'd be great if you can just think about what it is that's bothering you now. But I think at the time I felt that I had lost this client.
I actually,
So,
by the way, but so perfect, perfect. And then we'll go the two last questions. Here's what's fascinating. If you as a coach can do the right thing, even if the right thing may mean that the client says, "Hey, I'm no longer interested," would you
yeah,
still, if it could have gone another way, he could have said, would you still have done the exact same thing, knowing what you now
yeah,
know?
absolutely. Absolutely. And I've been in that situation many times where it's my gut is going, oh, shit, dude, you've lost it. You've screwed this up. And sometimes you have screwed it up and you're done, but the vast majority of times you're not. It's a moment
Mm,
and you just kind of
got
let it go. So my level of confidence and conviction and people's ability to sit with ambiguity has soared over the last year and a half in doing this research into midlife, to where I can sit in the middle of that and I can feel the voice saying, Aneace, you got to fix this now. You go in, you got to give an answer to this because it's all falling apart, especially in a team situation. And then now I can sit on my hands. I can just sit back and say, okay, just let that chaos work itself through the team now. They are mature adults. They've dealt with much bigger issues in their personal lives and their professional lives. It'll come out. And that conviction, I think, it helps to come out as well, because you're sitting there with your body language and everything has a lot more certainty that it's okay. It's okay to be going through this chaos that you can't figure something out. It'll come out. So I think I have a lot more of that ability today. And if it doesn't come out and they don't want me there anymore, that's absolutely fine. Come
I
out for them later.
No, I love that. So if people are, I got two more questions, so hang out if you're still here. Um, if people are excited and they just enjoyed hearing you, they want to learn more and reach out to you, how best can they do that?
So I have a name that's very uniquely spelled. So I'm able to get the .com on my first name. The easiest thing is Aneace.com, ANEACE.com. That's my website. You have access to my books. There's a lot of information on there. So even access to me, you can send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. LinkedIn at Aneace Haddad. And again, Aneace, Google Aneace. There aren't, I'm the only one who pops up, so there's a lot of stuff that's easy to find. I'm easy to find.
Nice. Nice. Thank you for that. And so given this conversation and what we talked about, is there a question that you would have liked me to ask, or there's one question you want to ask yourself that I didn't ask?
Well, it's a question I can't answer. I love it's what's your next big transformation? You had that big transformation from tech CEO to executive coach, C-suite coach. You're at the end of midlife now, so you're looking back and talking a lot about midlife and all that stuff. And what's your next big transformation that'll take you into your 70s and 80s? That's a
Okay.
question that's on my. I have no answer to it. I think it's going to be an extension of what I do today, but clearly it won't be what I do today. I gut feel is that it has something to do with this natural, organic ability we have as human beings to transform at midlife, and I think that might give rise to modalities and team coaching. How to put it? Team coaching principles that cause a much faster and natural and organic emergence of living better as groups. There's something in that area that I find extremely intriguing that I think would really change the way I do my work. Yeah.
I like it. It's really fascinating. It's how many people feel comfortable saying, "Hey, let me ask myself a question," and it's a good question, but I don't know if I know the answer. Right? It shows a certain amount of vulnerability. It shows coachability. It shows who you are and where you are, and the realistic assessment of who you are today. And I appreciate you sharing yourself that way. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mitchell.
You're welcome. I really love this interview. I really appreciate you spending the time and just showing up as yourself. So, Aneace, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Are you welcome? So now, if you're still here, this is for those who are listening or watching. It is now time for you to take action. It is time to spread Aneace's cred dust. Click on the like button, share this link, take those aha messages that you found relevant for this conversation and share it on your social. Thanks so much for joining us. Looking forward to seeing you at the next episode of Leaders Living Their Values. Take care, everyone. Bye now.